Hey, welcome to AI for Knuckle-Draggers with William Poet and myself, Mike Schmitt. We're excited to have you here. And today's conversation is going to be talking about the rate of change and how quickly things are moving. And William, one of the things that just is amazing to me, I was having this conversation with a customer yesterday and talking about one of the benefits of using my agent, the agents you and I are using, is that we're using five or six different large learning models, and they're all kind of under one agent with seven or eight sub agents each. But that every 3 weeks, 3 weeks ago, you and I were talking about how Opus 4.7, which comes out of the Claude suite of large learning model, was the cat's meow. And then like 2 weeks ago, ChatGPT comes out with their 5.5, and it's as good and maybe a little better in some fashion. And it seems like we've been seeing this trend over the last 3 or 4 months that every 2 or 3 weeks, one model jumps over the other model and the others all start to catch up. And what do you think about that?
You know, I've never seen anything happen this fast. Humanity has literally never seen anything this fast. Demis Hassabis, who is the head of AI for Google, he's won a Nobel Prize in science, and he says, and if you can wrap your head around this for all our knuckle dragging friends out there, the next 10 years, and he actually said this in 2025, that in the next 10 years, we will see 10 times the amount of change humanity saw in the previous 100 years. And to give you some perspective around that, my dad was born in 1919 on a ranch. I believe there was one car, no tractors. My dad rode his horse to school, which was 5 miles away. My grandmother, who was born in 1877 in Santa Barbara, she died in 69, and she saw man walk on the moon. So just take a second and be with that paradigm from, literally the old West to watching a man walk on the moon. That was her lifespan. 10 times that change in 10 years. And that's where we're living, Mike. I mean, that's what we're here to help people prepare for.
Well, yeah, and just because we think you and I both believe that if people are somewhat familiar with it, they'll be a little less afraid of it. And if you look at the statistics right now, overall adoption of the use of generative AI in the United States, we rank 24th in the world. There might be a lot of reasons for that, but people in the United States are a little hesitant. They're a little skeptical. They're a little scared to get too close to it. And I get it, right? And we talked about in the last episode how when I set up the agent, I bought a brand new machine, wiped it clean. It's not connected to my network. I don't want it sharing any of the data sources that I have, and I give it the data that I want it to have to kind of build out what the tool is, just like I would a brand new employee. I rarely would ever give a brand new employee all of the passwords to all of my bank accounts and my credit cards and my insurance policies and everything else, right? You got to go through and kind of learn. And we're kind of you treating these agents a little bit like new employees, but the rate of change, how fast things are coming, the graphics just in 6 months where you would ask the whatever model you were using to go through and generate a picture, and the picture would come out with human being looking things, but they'd have six or seven fingers, and it couldn't spell, it couldn't put a word inside of an image. And those things are getting pretty tuned up in just 6 months to where that's getting fixed. And the teams we were using 6 months ago to do image generation are not the teams we're necessarily using today. Doesn't mean those teams haven't improved a little bit, but everybody is hopscotching over each other. And the nice thing about when you have an agent set up that has access to all of them, that you can kind of like you can adapt on the fly as you're producing product tools, having it look at your websites, whatever you're having to do, and know that you've got the best models available. But the best models are also sometimes more expensive than the old models. So controlling cost is another thing you and I talk about. So rate of change, And how many tokens do we burn while we're doing something?
As I'm looking at our little podcast backdrop as we're speaking, and this is super cool. Great graphics, all AI generated. And more importantly, and to Mike's point, I'm sure you guys remember if you were playing with image generation even a year ago. He's absolutely right. You might have six fingers, you might have a leg coming out of somebody's head. You couldn't do any words in your graphics, and that's been solved. And not only has it been solved, here's one just crazy use case. I for this show that we're created, we're now in episode 3 of the number one podcast in the world around AI for Knuckle-Draggers. At least it's number one in the hearts and mind of our posse, according to our posse. And so like I said, look, I created an agent. I need you to be the producer of our show. It said we're in something called OBS Studios right now, which allows us to change scenes. So now I'm going to pop to both of us, and now I'm going to pop to Mike, and now I'm going to pop back to both of us. And I don't know how to do this. My AI agent created the graphics. It created a YouTube page. It created all of the and so this is for some of you guys. This might seem way out there, but when I train, build, or deploy an agent, when Mike does the same thing, we give it the tools, we give it the context, and we give it the permissions it needs to go in and create the graphics, to start to build the YouTube page, to open up the studio, to set the parameters. And so I'm sitting here watching, and it's a little disconcerting because I'm working on my home computer. And I just told my agent before we came live, hey, I've got a meeting and a demo after this. I want you to schedule I want you to create an appointment, make it in Google Meets, make sure you email the link. Well, as we're talking, this thing pops up. Hey, can I have access to your messages? Yeah, I give it permission. So it goes into my messages, finds the email of this prospective client who we're doing a demo for. And this is all happening in real time as we're doing the show. And in terms of speed, and we touched on this in our first show, you're going to hear us say this all the time. You can't keep up. And what I mean, you can't keep up. Mike's got an agent. I have an agent that every night scrapes the internet. It goes through all of X. It goes through Substat. It goes through
Couple of agents or more.
multiple agents, and
Yeah.
they're pulling in the data that I need. So every morning when I get my brief delivered at 7:30, I'm focused on AI enterprise deployment, how to use these agents, and I don't have time to look at all of the articles, and so it finds them, it tracks them, it brings them down. And in terms of currency, and I want this to land for you guys. If I'm watching a training video around AI, if I'm looking for a news feature around any of these tools, if it's more than a week old, I don't read it. That's how fast this stuff is going. And it's a
You know,
little bit overwhelming, right?
well, it's certainly well, you feel like your system has just gotten tuned in to the current model you're using, and you're starting to kind of feel pretty good about it. Then all of a sudden, somebody comes out with when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT 5.5, it had just been 2 weeks before that Anthropic had come up with Messios, right? Is what they're calling
Mythos.
it.
Mythos.
Mythos, right? And this model that they gave everybody a glimpse of for about 4 hours, and then said, "Holy cow, this could be used as much against us as it could be used for us." And so they pulled it back and said, "Hey, maybe we should give it to some folks to try to build defenses." Because I think there are going to be some things in AI that are going to be used for good, but they could also be used for malware or malicious type things. And so, I feel like the people that are running most of the AI companies right now are they're trying to do both. Sometimes they go a little overboard one or the other. Um, but the public, right, is sitting here, and they're skeptical. There are some statistics that are sitting out there that says that the American people have a lower opinion of AI than they do of Congress.
That's hard to do. That's hard
That's
to
hard to
do.
do, right?
Right.
And part of it is, I think, because they're not. They're just not familiar with it. And so, like you and I keep talking about, we would encourage you to just find something, whether you're on Claude or you're on Chat GPT or you're on Copilot, do something. Ask it to do something that you think is hard and see what it comes back with. And don't take the first answer. Take the first answer and challenge it and say, I think that was a little simple. You're glossing over my question. I need you to go deeper and maybe do that twice. And then when you do that, take it. And if you did it in Copilot, then take it over to Chat GPT and hand the response back and say, hey, my intern just did this for me. Could you take a look and analyze this? Does this seem reasonable or could it be improved? And I think this is how we start to get rid of confirmation bias and we start to gain confidence what the tool is and what our agency over these tools are to be able to adapt them for the way we want to live our lives, not us having to adapt our lives to the way AI wants us to run.
You just said something, agency. We need to be using, we need to make sure that we're using these tools to create more human agency. And Mike's pointed out the fact that, US has around a 20% positive view on it, which means 80% is negative. Um, you're already being used by AI. You're being used. Amazon is using AI to grab your attention. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Have you ever? You're in your kitchen. Yeah, you're in your kitchen and you're having a conversation like, I need a new patio umbrella. And the next thing you know, you go on Facebook and there's patio umbrellas there. I mean, this is happening in real time, and our take on this is I'm not going to be a victim of this. I'm not going to give up my agency to this. I'm going to become, since we are living in the age of intelligent machines. Period. Full stop. It's called Industry 4.0. We can't avoid it. We can't make it go away. And so, even though we are knuckle draggers, we're not stupid. And when you recognize there's a new sheriff in town, and this sheriff's powerful, and this sheriff's doing things, you better understand it, and you better be able to leverage it, and you better be able to use it. And so that's kind of, as we grow our posse, this is about agency and it's about being proactive. A mindful, proactive action you take today will always beat being forced into reaction. And that's where I think we are right now, Mike. There's such a tiny percentage of senior executives are using AI, deploying AI. Such a tiny percentage of the world has agents. You and I, you're using our agents all day long for everything. And you can't wait. Wait to your own demise. And you've talked about sort of a separation that you see coming. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Oh, well, that's more the gloom and doom thing. But I do think that there's a strata, right? I think over the next 10 or 15 years, we potentially risk more stratifying the American economy, the American populace, maybe even the world more, from an economic haves and have-nots. And I think if you look at what AI is being used for to the positive, that I think is the positive, which is medical innovations, right? How do we come up with better insulins? I've got a daughter who's type 1 diabetic. How are we looking at type 1 diabetes? How are we looking to cure Lou Gehrig's disease? I had a partner who passed away of Lou Gehrig's disease about 11 years ago, right? There are real people that are out there looking at solutions for these things. And I think AI is helping to accelerate the rate of growth in those things. How are we going to get to the moon? Right? Victor Glover from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo was the pilot on the Artemis
Love
2
him.
mission, right? You and I are
Yep.
both Mustangs, right? Go Cal Poly. But Victor Glover was a pilot there, and part of that Artemis mission is being, the engineers behind the Artemis mission are using AI to figure out how to build structures on the moon, to find water on the moon. They can find water, they're going to be able to build fuel, so they can go through and be able to launch rockets off the moon as well, whether it comes back to the United States or comes back to the Earth or goes to Mars. There's real world things that are going to happen in these next 10 or 15 years, and they're largely going to be powered by human beings who have agency in conjunction with artificial intelligence. I think one of the things you and I have talked about is that you look at the human brain and you look at psychologists and you ask them, hey, how much are we really using our human brain? And I think, the common perspective is most human beings can use 12 or 15% of their total capacity in their brain. To me, I look at AI as a way for us to slowly become even more like what God intended us to be. And we can maybe start using 30, 40, 50% of our brain and start to have tools that help us to get better, not forget things, learn, maybe be more creative. And I think, but you see this stratification potentially both in the U.S. economy and I think certainly in the world economy maybe where the people that are the societies that are embracing AI may have a real leg up over the societies that don't. Lifestyle, you could have the conversation of just because you have AI in your society, does that make a better lifestyle or not? Some people could say that the simpler lifestyle is actually more desirable. I am not going to argue with you on that, right? Because I can see that a case could be made, but in terms of education and solving hard problems and economic development, I think AI is absolutely going to be well. There's no putting it back in the bottle. The genie is out of the bottle and it is running. So how do we bring people up and get them somewhat comfortable so they can adapt it in their lives?
One of the things, one of the goals of our show is real talk, no BS, and as Mike said, there is no doubt that AI is going to create some amazing advances in material science, in healthcare, in disease eradication. This will happen, and there's also going to be some pain points along the way. When a new technology comes along, there's going to be displacement, there's going to be disruption. And our goal for myself, for my family, for our posse is to how do we get to the really, really great stuff? How do we get through kind of the messy parts with as little pain as possible? And again, it concerns me that right now America's adoption rate is only about 24%. There's countries right now where it's over 50%. There is a competition for intelligence, and access to intelligence gives you a competitive advantage. And the experts, the real masters of AI right now, are saying that by the way I use my tools, I'm getting an 80-point jump in intelligence. Well, an 80-point jump in intelligence, the difference between learning impaired, which is an IQ of around 70, and genius is 140, that's 2x. You add another 80 points on that. And then, what I want you guys to think about, and right now, the latest tests around what the best LLMs are, they're testing right around 138, 140. So they are reaching genius level. But the difference is they're geniuses in every vertical. Einstein was a genius in two, math and physics, and he changed the world. We now have resources, we have agents, we have team members that are experts in physics, philosophy, religion, mechanical science, poetry, art, literature. They speak 160 languages. I was working with a client here in Oxnard who has a lot of Hispanic farm laborers, and we were putting out some tools and protocols and building some apps for them. And he's like, the first one I did kind of came out in the King Spanish. And he laughed and he's like, hey, Poet, my team and I, we speak, California English. It's like, it's a totally different dialect. It's like, we can't even read this. So I'm like, hey, and this was a year ago. How many dialects of Spanish do you speak or can you write in? It said 16. It can speak Spanglish. It can speak Mexican Spanish, Puerto Rican Spanish, Colombian Spanish, King's High Spanish. So one of the things as a leader, and I don't care if you're leading a plumbing company, if you're leading a Fortune 100 tech company, we need to think differently. We've never before had a board of advisors who you can ask this level, the high level questions. And when we coach people, before you have it write an email for you, imagine a board of advisors that you're paying $1 million an hour to. Because if you could get these people in a room, That would be a deal. You're probably not going to ask him to help you write an email or how do I make mom spaghetti, right? So Mike, how are you thinking differently? How have you stretched and expanded how you think with and around AI?
Let me go back to where you, and I know, you and I have some conversations and we don't always agree on everything. And one of the things is I'm not as concerned about the United States citizens being a little skeptical because I think that skepticism is going to serve you well in the long run. But I don't think you should wait 5 years to jump on the board. I think you should probably be playing with it right now, even if you're just going through and getting your Chat GPT or your Claude subscription and start to play with it to get some familiarity with it because you and your job are going to have it as part of what you're doing, and having a little skepticism is okay because I think you don't want to get stuck with the Nigerian bank draft type thing and make a mistake. I get that. So do something that's smaller and controlled and work through it. Um, I think and then
Let me
build.
pause because I want to push on you on that. And this is something
Yeah,
Mike and I we both agree around the impact. We agree on where we're going. I think our biggest debate is speed. I'm seeing rates of change beyond anything I can fathom. I mean, and it's happening now like on a weekly basis. So, and to Mike's point around being skeptical, I might change the language a little bit. You got to respect the power and danger of this tool. 100% full stop. Um, what can you wait to start using it? Not if you want to stay competitive. OpenAI and Anthropic, the two big leaders, on May 11th, they dropped a $5.5 billion rollout plan. So they realize that if you're going to be a viable company, so now we're talking to the big guns out there. You will not be a viable company unless you have agentic AI throughout your organization. That's that. Now, is it perfect right now? Is it seamless right now? No. But here's what I want you guys thinking about. So by the time your company, you employ 10,000 people, 100,000 people, by the time your company hires Price Waterhouse or hires McKinsey and you go through the procurement process and then you go into the beginning of the deployment phase, we're talking 12 months, 18 months. And like, we're not going to be sitting on the same planet in 12 months. We're not going to be sitting on the same, in terms of the power of these machines, what they could do 6 months ago and what's happening on my computer right now, I wouldn't have believed 6 months ago. And so, and Mike, this is where you and I disagree a little bit, but I'll say to you listening, you got to start playing right now. You got to start learning. You got to invest in your. Besides watching our show, a minimum of an hour a week. If you pledge to yourself, to your team, to your family, I'm going to play with these tools an hour a week. You're going to be in such a better position because you got to learn how to orchestrate intelligence. That's the new superpower. You got to because the men and women, this is that bifurcation Mike talked about. You learn how to orchestrate intelligence. Was it last month the first two-person billion-dollar company happened? And it happened because they were leveraging AI. And I don't know, 20 years ago, $1 billion company needed 35,000. A friend of mine I was working with managed CKE Enterprises going back, I'm going to say in 2005. They were doing 1.4 billion a year. They had 35,000 employees to take care of. This is Carl's Jr.,
yeah.
CKA,
A
and all
lot of
that.
my businesses that I've run and have interacted with, you look at $500,000 or so per employee per year, right? You pay them average salary between 60 and $80,000, and you're looking for 500,000 to six or $700,000. That's in the service industry or construction or what have you, and so that's the kind of we looked at labor in our economy. We looked at economic growth to be tied in a linear fashion to labor production. What AI is absolutely going to do is we're going to start seeing a complete disconnect from economic growth and the number of people. I think we have 340 million people in America, and we're doing $38 trillion or so, plus or minus, and on economic GDP this year. You know, I think you're going to see 10 years from now, we're going to have about 340 million people, maybe 380 million people, and we're going to be doing. If you listen to Elon Musk, he says we're going to be doing $380 trillion of work. But let's just say he's a little over optimistic. I think 150 to 200 trillion dollars absolutely possible with basically the same number of people. And I
Right.
think that you're starting to see a decoupling of economic growth and the amount of the amount of labor it's going to take. And that doesn't mean the people that are left are having to work twice as hard. I think that the case could be made that instead of 60-hour weeks, you're going to start seeing 45-hour weeks, and yet you're going to see a tripling in output. So what are those people going to be able to do with the extra hours by going to their kids' games and be able to participate? Maybe one of the things we should maybe talk in our next episode, William, is the people that are doing homeschooling that are starting to kind of
Absolutely.
come to you and us and look at the T9 and think about how they can do homeschooling, because now you can have all the best professors, teachers, exercises, grading, and you can do it in your own home for a fraction of the cost of what a private school would do, and you can do it in the way and manner you want to do it, and start to build children that are being taught how to think, not just what to think.
Well, and I think I love it. We'll definitely deep dive that. But just yesterday, I was doing a demo meeting with a prospective client, and there is a school right now in Austin. They've got a few locations. It's called the Atlas School, and the kids are all learning. They all have their custom AI tutors. They are testing in the top 1% in the nation in terms of testing scores. They're only in class 2 hours a day, and then they're engaged in physical activities and they're engaged in building things. And this school is $60,000 a year for kindergarten. I don't know a whole lot of people that can afford that. What we're talking about doing is really democratizing education, democratizing customization. And this one individual, three different children, you're going to have three different learning styles. You're going to have some that have that are gifted. Some have learning challenges, and I was on a school board for 7 years. We dump all our kids in what can sort of serve the lowest common denominator or the mean denominator, which means the gifted kids are bored and have nothing to do. The learning challenge kids don't get the love and support that they need. We can fix that. And everyone, and this is something that Mike and I believe firmly in, I can't imagine not having my own AI agent. I can't imagine not having somebody that's got my back that I can go to that does research for me, can handle my appointments, my calendar, can say, hey, I want to do a podcast, build out my studio for me. And this is happening in real time today. And I think Mike said this a couple episodes ago. It's not perfect. It's wonky. There's a lot of friction. We
Yeah.
spent an hour
It's as
trying to
dumb
get
today as it's going to ever be.
right.
Like it's not going to be dumber tomorrow than it was
It,
today.
it took us an hour to get our cameras, get into the studio, going back and forth, having our AI producers, get things to fit into the boxes. But I couldn't have done that 6 months ago. This would have been impossible. And it's getting better. It's getting better every single day. And the advantage that we want all the posse, all you guys to have is understand it, play with it. We are AI agnostic, 100%. Mike said this, last a month ago. Opus 4.7 was the cat's meow. Now it's ChatGPT 5.5. Next month it's going to be Grok 5.0. The tools are doing this. It's about the user. It's about your capacity to understand the outcomes you want, to have clarity around what done looks like. Again, it goes back to before computers. If you were leading a team, can you communicate? What is the outcome you want? The clarity, the intentionality, the strategy? We just have tools to help us do it. And I could not be more excited to be alive. And we've had this conversation. I'm 64 years young, and I've never been more excited. I've never been turned on. I've never had more fun. I mean, half the time I call myself like a baboon in the backyard with a lighter. I'm just, the first time my agents took over my computer and were like clicking and scrolling and doing, I just sat there staring at it. Like we are living in some wild times and some good times.
Well, I agree. And I'm glad we're able to do it together. And I'm glad that the people you and I get to work with, because we're the reason we're called AI for Knuckle-Draggers is we're talking about the blue collar, we're talking about middle America, we're talking about mid-sized businesses, and how do we make this relevant to you guys and allow you to participate in what's going on and start to gain a little bit of information so that if there is some hesitancy, if there is some fear, we can kind of start to kind of put that on a back burner a little bit, and you can start to see where things could go and start to figure out how your family and your businesses and your communities might actually benefit from you being actively involved or more actively involved than you are today, because it is here, guys. The genie is out of the bottle. Click down below, join our posse. We'd love to hear what you think about our podcast so far, and give us some ideas for other things we might talk about in the future.
So here's the pro tip for the week. Download three of these. Download ChatGPT, Grok, and Gemini. Play with them. Look for one repetitive action that you take in your life, one repetitive thing that you could hand off, offload, and play with how you can deploy this. Break it. We say this to people all the time. Play with it, break it, learn from it, elevate. And, Mike and I have your back. The posse has your back. We're having a ton of fun. Can't wait to see you in episode 4, where we really get into how can we customize training and education, not just for our kids. When you onboard a new accountant, you onboard a new attorney, you onboard anybody, how can we bring them up to speed and how can we elevate their impact? And that's what we're going to be talking about every week. Schmitty, love doing this with you. To our old and new members of the posse, it's going to be a wild ride. We're so glad you're here with us. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, get the word out. We need more. Where this posse is going big.
We're having fun. Go out and have a great weekend, William. And in fact, you and I are going to a barbecue on Sunday. I'm really looking forward to. So maybe we'll tell a little bit of people a little bit about a 118-year-old society, right? That we're going to a barbecue for on Sunday. But looking forward to seeing you, and thanks to all of you who've tuned in.
I'll see you next week, boss.
I was raised in the rust, built tough as nails, where the wind cuts sharp and the weak boys bail. I felt the dirt, I've tasted steel, but I ain't never bowed and I never